It's mine. It's all mine.
Welcome back to the Vanished Lands. Darkness, it is always held secret, but sometimes it also hides a stare that does not blink, does not move, does not rest. In that stare, men have seen their own ruin. In that stare, kingdoms have fallen. At the heart of that stare is a stone, not an ordinary stone, but a black jewel so strange that people once believed it was no less than the eye of a god. They called it the Eye of Brahma. Long ago, in a land of temples and sacred chants, there stood a statue, a tall figure, Brahma, the creator, carved by hands that trembled in devotion. His face was calm, eternal, timeless, and in the center of his forehead, where the third eye was said to see beyond the world of men, they placed a gem, a diamond, not white like ice, not bright like fire, but dark, deep black, as if night itself had hardened into crystal. The people would bow to it. They would whisper prayers under the shadow of oil lamps. They believed that the diamond did not only see them, it judged them. For centuries, no one dared to touch it. No one even thought of stealing it, for they said it was alive. It was a god's own eye, fixed in stone. To touch it was to blind a god. To steal it was to invite wrath upon one's blood. But time is a cruel master. The world changes, faith weakens, greed grows. One night, when the temple was silent, when even the priests had closed their eyes in rest, shadows moved. No storm shook the sky. No thunder gave warning. Only footsteps echoed on the cold floor. The thieves came without words. They knew what they wanted. They climbed the idol, stretched trembling hands, and tore the black eye from the forehead of Brahma. The temple did not collapse. The earth did not open. But in the silence that followed, a curse began its journey. From that moment, whispers spread across the land. People said the jewel had changed, that it no longer glowed with sacred power, but with a darker fire. They said its surface reflected not light, but souls. And those who stared into it too long would see their own death hidden in its depths. The thieves vanished. Some say they drowned before reaching the river's edge. Some say madness drove them into the forest where no man returned. What became of them, no one truly knew. Only one truth remained. The jewel was gone from the temple. The god's eye was stolen. And with that theft, stories of doom began to circle like vultures. Years passed. Traders whispered of a strange diamond moving from one hand to another. Men who owned it spoke of nightmares. Their health faded. Their fortunes collapsed. Some took their lives without warning, as if something unseen pressed on their minds. The jewel did not stay in one place for long. Each time it passed on, someone was left broken behind. The priests called it cursed. The merchants called it unlucky. The wise called it dangerous. But collectors, blinded by greed, called it priceless. Imagine a gem that stares back at you, cold, black, endless. Imagine holding it in your palm and feeling that it was not yours to own, that it was watching you, waiting. Would you dare to keep it? The people of that time would not. Yet the jewel traveled from sacred ground to secret markets, from secret markets to royal courts. Always hidden, always feared, but always wanted. Children were told stories to keep them from wandering at night. They were warned, do not look into the cursed eye, for it sees more than your face. It sees the path of your fate. One legend told a man who laughed at the curse. He wore the jewel on his chest as a mark of triumph, but the laughter did not last. His house caught fire in the night. He and his family were found in the ashes, but the jewel was untouched, black, unburned, staring. Another tale spoke of a rich woman who carried it in her pocket, believing she could tame the curse with her wealth. But madness crept into her days. She swore voices called her name from the stone. She jumped from a cliff, her body shattered below. Yet when they searched her remains, the jewel lay calmly beside her, shining dark as ever. Such stories travel far, across seas, across centuries. The Black Orlov, as it came to be called, had already begun to carve its name in fear. It was no longer the Eye of Brahma. It was the Eye of Death, the Eye of Sorrow. But what makes a curse real? Is it the stone itself, carrying some unholy power? Or is it men and women, so filled with greed that they invite destruction upon themselves? Perhaps the curse is both. A meeting of hunger and punishment, a bond sealed between human desire and divine anger. When the jewel was stolen, something sacred was broken. Some say gods punish slowly, not in thunder, but in shadows. The curse of Black Orlov was not a quick strike. It was a chain of quiet tragedies, one after another, weaving across generations. And here is the haunting thought. The stone still exists. It has survived fires, falls, suicides, even attempt to break apart. Every hand that tried to own it was left empty. Every life that touched it ended in ruin. Yet the diamond remains. Oh, watching, waiting, picture in the dark. A black fire glowing where light should be. A stare you cannot escape. A silence that fills a room when you are alone with it. It is said that some objects remember, that they carry memory not in words, but in weight. The Black Orlov carries centuries of memory. Every drop of blood spilled, every scream, every broken mind, all caught inside its surface. That is why, when people see it today, they feel uneasy. They feel watched, as if the jewel knows. This was not a stone meant for mortal hands. It was meant for gods, torn from its rightful place. It became a wandering shadow. No land could claim it. No owner could hold it. Even now, when one hears of it, the same question rises. If you were given a chance to hold it, even for a moment, would you dare? Would you risk the stare of a god, knowing it has already marked so many before you? The story of the Black Orlov begins here, in silence, in theft, in darkness. What follows is a journey that will cross empires, oceans, and centuries. A journey filled with death, greed, and mystery. A journey that reminds us that sometimes treasures are not gifts. They are traps. And perhaps the greatest curse is not that the diamond destroys life, but that it survives life, that it watches the living fall while it remains eternal. So the eye waits, silent, patient. In the darkness, it glows, and those who dare to look too long never look away the same. The temple stood in silence, a silence so deep it seemed eternal. The air was heavy with incense. The smell of burning oil lamps lingered, clinging to the stone walls. Statues of gods stood tall, watching over the night. In the center, under a roof painted with stars and lotus flowers, towered the figure of Brahma. The idol's forehead once glowed with a black diamond, a gem so dark it swallowed the light around it. For centuries, the people of the land had bowed before it. They offered flowers, rice, and chants. They believed the jewel was not stone at all, but the living eye of a god. But that night, the eye was gone. The theft was swift. Shadows had entered while the priests slept, their faces unknown, their names lost to time. Only their act remained, pulling the jewel from the god's forehead. Fingers touched what no mortal hand should ever touch. The eye was torn away, hidden in cloth, carried into the night. The statue did not move. The roof did not fall. No thunder broke the sky, but silence filled the temple. A silence so thick that even the air seemed afraid to stir. When morning came, the priests entered with offerings. They froze. Their hands trembled. Where once the jewel had glowed, there was now only a hollow scar. Some dropped to their knees, their voices breaking into cries. Others stared in horror, unable to speak. One priest ran outside, shouting to the villagers, "The god has been blinded. The Eye of Brahma is gone." The people gathered, their faces pale, their hearts struck with fear. Mothers clutched their children. Old men shook their heads, whispering of doom. The temple that once brought peace now breathed dread. The priest declared that a curse had been set free. A curse not shouted, not written, but felt. They said the jewel would no longer bless, but destroy. Whoever carried it, whoever touched it, would carry death itself. From that day, fear grew like a shadow over the village. Some claimed they could hear faint cries in the night, echoes rising from the hollow in the idol's forehead. Some swore the air around the temple grew colder, as though the god himself had turned away. And then whispers began. The thieves who stole the jewel, none were seen again. Not in the streets, not on the roads, not in the markets. It was as though the earth swallowed them whole. Stories spread quickly. Some said the thieves drowned while trying to cross the river. Others said madness struck them before they could leave the forest. Their bodies were never found. Their names were erased. The people believed it was a curse. The eye did not wait long to claim its first price. But it did not end there. Rumors spread beyond the village. Traders spoke in low voices of the cursed jewel. They said the diamond was restless, that it carried vengeance in its black surface. To hold it was to be marked. To own it was to be chosen for ruin. Yet greed is louder than fear. Men with hungry hearts listened to the warnings but laughed. To them, it was not a curse, it was treasure, a jewel that could buy kingdoms, ships, and armies. They believed they were stronger than legends, stronger than curses. But the jewel did not care. One by one, stories of tragedy followed it. A merchant who bought it fell sick within weeks. His health wasted away, and his wealth with it. Another man who carried it vanished on a journey. His caravan returned without him, but the diamond was gone too. The priests shook their heads. They said, "The gods I seize all, and no one can run from it." The curse does not strike loud, but it strikes true. Fear deepened into belief. The villagers avoided even speaking the jewel's name aloud. They called it only the Eye. They warned their children to stay away from men who spoke of it. They prayed at the temple, though the hollow scar in Brahma's forehead reminded them daily of what was lost. One evening, an old woman sat by the fire. She told the children a tale. She said the diamond was not just a jewel, it was a soul, a living thing, angry at being torn from its place. She said it looked at men not as worshippers, but as prey. Whoever kept it too long would be consumed, the way fire consumes dry wood. The children listened with wide eyes. Some cried. Some swore they saw the jewel blink in the darkness of their dreams. From that night on, the curse was no longer a whisper. It was a truth, but still the jewel moved. No one knows how, but it traveled far, across deserts, across seas, hidden in boxes and bags, always with new owners. It was carried by rich men who wanted to boast, by wanderers who thought they could outsmart fate, by collectors who thought curses were nothing but stories. And each time the curse struck, a man who locked it in his chest never woke from sleep. A woman who wore it in a ring was found lifeless in her chamber. A prince who bought it to impress his court died in battle the same year, his body pierced with arrows. Each time the diamond survived. Each time it moved on. It seemed almost alive. The priest said the jewel no longer belonged to the gods. It had been broken from the statue, and now it was cursed to roam the world forever, a wandering eye, seeking vengeance on all who touched it. What is most haunting is how silent the curse is. No fire, no storm, no sudden strike. Only quiet ruin. Only tragedy that seems like chance until one notices the pattern. The jewel appears. Someone takes it. Misfortune follows. Death comes. The jewel survives. Over time, it became a shadow in history. People feared to speak of it, yet they could not ignore it. It had crossed from legend into reality. And so, the temple remained. The idol of Brahma still stood, but hollow, scarred, blind. A reminder of what was stolen. The people who walked past would lower their eyes, but they believed the god was still watching, even without the jewel. Watching and waiting. Imagine standing there, in that temple, staring at the empty space where the eye once glowed. Would you not feel it too? The weight of silence? The cold breath of something unseen? The certainty that something sacred had been broken, and the price of it still lingers? The curse of the Black Orlov did not scream. It whispered. It did not vanish with the thieves. It lived on, carried in the heart of the jewel itself. And those who believed they could own it found instead that it owned them. Even now, the thought chills the heart. The black diamond was never just stone. It was a wound carved into faith, into history, into the soul of every man and woman who dare to keep it. And wounds do not heal when they are fed with blood. The priests were right. The curse had awakened. And once awake, it would never sleep again. The Black Orlov did not stay buried in silence. It was too strange, too alluring, too dangerous to remain hidden forever. In the colonial era, when ships crossed seas and empires stretched their hands across continents, the diamond surfaced again. In India, traders whispered of it. Not openly, not in the markets where spices and silks were weighed, but in quiet corners behind closed doors. They said there was a jewel that no one should touch, a jewel that carried both fortune and death. Men who fear it would cross themselves and walk away. Men who hunger for wealth leaned closer, asking the price. It was wrapped in cloth, carried in darkness, never displayed under the sun, for its black surface was said to swallow light. Merchants treated it as both treasure and plague. They passed it like contraband, hurriedly, as if eager to rid themselves of it before the curse noticed their names. Across docks, across rivers, across dusty roads, the Black Orlov traveled, and wherever it went, shadows followed. A merchant in Calcutta who held it fell into sudden madness. He was seen walking barefoot in the streets at night, speaking to the air, his eyes wide and empty. Within weeks, he vanished. Some said he threw himself into the river. Others believed the jewel claimed him. Another trader carried it on a caravan, hoping to sell it to a nobleman. On the road, bandits attacked. Every guard was slain. The nobleman himself left bleeding in the sand. Yet, when the bodies were searched, the jewel was missing. A rumor spread. The bandits who took it did not live long enough to spend their loot. Their camp was later found, silent, the fires cold, the men dead without wounds. And still, the jewel was gone. Such stories multiplied. The diamond left India by ship. Sailors who loaded it swore the sea grew restless. A storm rose from a clear sky, snapping masts, drowning half the crew. The ship staggered into port battered and broken, but the diamond was intact. The captain who carried it was not so fortunate. He collapsed before the voyage ended, his face pale, his lips whispering words no one could understand. His body was lowered into water. The jewel, once again, survived. Coincidence, some said. Every sea journey carries risk. Every man may fall to illness. But when such accidents repeat, when each name connected to the jewel is struck down, does coincidence still hold? Or is there something unseen, something that watches from within the stone? Collectors began to take interest. Word of a large black diamond reached the ears of men who built empires and women who wore fortunes on their necks. They were told the tales of death, but dismissed them as superstition. Curses, they said, are for the weak-minded. A jewel of such size must be taken, must be owned. Yet every new hand that closed around it seemed to tremble in time. A wealthy officer purchased it, hiding it in his chest as proof of triumph. Within months, his family estate burned to the ground. He perished in the fire. His servants escaped, swearing the blaze began without cause. Amid the ruins, the jewel was found, untouched, its black face gleaming in the ash. Another owner, a noble woman, wore it proudly at gatherings. She laughed when warned of its past, but her laughter ended quickly. She grew restless, pale, her nights disturbed by visions. She claimed the stone whispered in her sleep. Friends said she began to avoid mirrors, fearing she would see more than her reflection. One morning, she was found lifeless in her chamber. The diamond was still clutched in her hand. Is this madness born from guilt and fear? Or does the jewel carry something more? A presence that breaks the mind before it breaks the body? The journey of the Black Orlov across oceans was marked by such questions. Each tragedy seemed to echo the last. The pattern was too sharp to ignore. Owners suffered. Owners died, yet the jewel endured. One cannot help but notice how it seemed indestructible. Fires consumed wood and flesh. Storms drowned ships, blades pierced skin, but the diamond survived untouched, as if it could not be harmed, as if it belonged to another order of being, beyond the fragility of men. Detectives of history, scholars of legend, have looked back and asked the same thing. Was this merely chance? A chain of unrelated tragedies tied together by fearful minds? Or was it the work of something darker, a curse older than empires? Carried silently in a black gem? Consider the pattern. The jewel moves from hand to hand, often in secret. Each man or woman who owns it falls swiftly into ruin. Their deaths are sudden, their lives cut short. But the diamond is always found again, whole, waiting, almost as if it chose to survive while everything around it perished. What else in history carries such a story? Not many. The Black Orlov stands apart, not as a treasure, but as a shadow. By the time it reached Europe, it was already whispered of as a cursed jewel. Traders who once hoped to profit from it now sold it with haste, eager to rid themselves of its weight. Buyers, blind to warnings, thought themselves safe. Yet the curse was patient. It did not strike in the same way each time. One fell to madness, another to fire, another to drowning, another to despair. The methods changed, but the result was always the same. And still, the jewel glowed in its strange dark light, untouched by the ruin it left behind. Those who studied it began to wonder if the curse was not random at all. Perhaps it chose. Perhaps it watched the weakness in each heart and struck where it hurt most. If a man was proud, it broke his name. If a woman was vain, it broke her beauty. If a family clung to wealth, it burned their riches. The curse seemed not mindless, but intelligent. This thought alone chills the blood. A curse that thinks, a stone that sees. The Black Orlov's journey across oceans was not the tale of a jewel traded and sold. It was a tale of a living shadow slipping through hands, weaving death into history. Imagine standing at a harbor then, as the jewel arrived in a chest carried down a gangplank. Sailors whispering, merchants eyeing it with hunger, priests muttering prayers. The waves crashing against the docks, as if warning of what was to come. Imagine knowing the tales of every man before who had held it, and yet watching another reach out to claim it again. Would you not wonder? Would you not ask yourself if you were watching a man take his first step toward ruin? The journey of the Black Orlov did not only stretch across seas, it stretched across lives, across generations, across the thin line between belief and fear. And so the curse followed, from India's temples to the hands of merchants, from the decks of storm-tossed ships to the halls of European courts. Each place it touched was marked. Each life it entered was broken. Coincidence or curse? That question has echoed ever since. What cannot be denied is this: no jewel in history has carried so many tragedies across so many oceans. The Black Orlov was not just a diamond. It was a shadow carried in a box, a watchful eye wrapped in cloth. It crossed seas not as treasure, but as punishment, and wherever it landed, ruin followed. Even today, when one looks back, the pattern stands clear. Death, madness, disappearance, despair, all tied to a single stone. And so, as it sailed from one shore to another, one truth became certain. The Black Orlov did not belong to men. It did not belong to kingdoms or traders or collectors. It belonged to itself, and it carried with it not fortune, but fate. The Black Orlov crossed oceans, survived storms, and left death behind in silence. But its most haunting chapter began when it arrived in the modern world. The diamond reached New York, the city of lights, wealth, and restless ambition. A city where men and women believed nothing was stronger than their will, not even a curse whispered from the past. The jewel did not arrive in daylight. It came hidden in velvet, carried in secret from Europe, passed through merchants who knew its reputation but refused to speak of it. By the time it reached American soil, its legend had already grown. They called it cursed. They called it deadly. Yet collectors, blinded by hunger, saw only power and prestige. Wealthy aristocrats, businessmen, and jewel lovers whisper of it at parties. They lean close over glasses of wine, asking the same question: who owns the eye now? Who has dared to take it? And who will pay the price next? New York was a heart of ambition, where the rich built towers of glass and steel. To hold a jewel so rare was more than vanity. It was proof that one had risen above all others. But the jewel had its own rules. Its first owners in the city kept it locked away. They displayed it only to a chosen few, believing the curse could not touch them if they guarded it carefully. But the curse does not need to be seen to strike. It waits in silence. One man, a collector of rare artifacts, locked it in his vault. Days later, his mind began to unravel. He claimed he could hear a faint tapping at night, as if someone knocked from inside the safe. His family thought it was madness brought on by age, but he swore the sound was real. Within a month, he was found dead, collapsed in his study. His fortune was untouched, his vault still sealed. And yet, the jewel was there, waiting. Another owner, a wealthy woman, placed it on a necklace and wore it to a grand gathering. Under the chandeliers, the diamond seemed to glow darker than ever, pulling every eye in the room. Some said it looked as though it stared back at them. She laughed at the warnings, claiming curses were for children, but soon her laughter changed. She grew pale, restless. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping. Servants heard her pacing the halls at night, whispering to herself. Then one morning, she was gone. Her body was found beneath the stone balcony of her mansion. The jewel was discovered near her, unbroken, shining cold in the dawn light. Whispers spread quickly. Too many deaths, too many strange endings. Yet the jewel continued to pass from one hand to another. The strangest part was not only the deaths, but the way the mind seemed to crumble before the body. Owners spoke of feeling watched, even when alone. Some said the diamond changed in the dark, glowing faintly as if alive. A man claimed he saw eyes inside it, not one reflection, but many, staring at him all at once. His friends thought him drunk. Weeks later, he vanished without trace. The curse had grown sharper in the city, in ancient temples. It had taken lives with silence. On ships, it had left men dead without warning. But in New York, it began to crush the mind itself. The city that never slept became the perfect stage for madness, where no one knew if a scream was curse or crime. Detectives who looked at the deaths tried to find reason. A fall from a balcony, a sudden illness, a disappearance. They marked each as coincidence. But when the names were placed together, a pattern emerged. Every victim had held the same jewel. Every tragedy followed the Black Orlov like a shadow. Was this chance? Or was the stone playing a deeper game, breaking lives not with blades or fire, but with fear itself? Imagine the terror of holding it, locking it in your home, and then feeling your thoughts slowly betray you. The jewel did not need to strike swiftly. It waited. It gnawed. It turned whispers into screams inside the mind. And when despair was complete, it left the body broken. The diamond was not just cursed. It was cruel. Collectors in New York began to hesitate. Some sold it at a loss, eager to rid themselves of its weight. Others hid it away, refusing to admit they had ever touched it. But each time it left one hand, it found another, as though it chose who would be next. One Russian princess brought it into the public eye, proud, radiant. She wore it as proof of her fortune. People marveled at her daring, but her fate was sealed. Soon, her days darkened. Those around her said she grew restless, her laughter thin, her gaze haunted. Then came the fall. She leapt from a building, her body broken, but the jewel survived the plunge. That death shook the city. Newspapers whispered of the cursed stone. Reporters hinted at the chain of suicides, the strange accidents, the madness of wealthy names. But even bad press could not end the hunger for the diamond. If anything, it made it more famous. To some, it was no longer just a jewel. It was a forbidden test. Could one hold it and survive? Could one outwit the curse? Could one wear it and walk away? But none could. The Black Orlov left behind more graves and heirs. It broke more fortunes than it built. And always it remained whole. No scratch, no mark, as if no human hand could ever truly touch it. What makes it most haunting is how personal the curse became. It did not strike all at once, but crawled into the mind of each owner. It whispered doubts. It planted fear. It crushed pride. By the time the body fell, the spirit was already broken. The jewel was not simply an object of beauty. It was a mirror of weakness. It seemed to find what each owner feared most and feed upon it. One feared madness and lost his mind. Another feared shame and leapt into death. Another feared ruin and watched his wealth turn to ash. It was not random. It was precise, almost intelligent. As it lingered in New York, more and more began to believe it was not just a curse tied to a temple theft long ago. It was something alive, a presence bound within stone, waiting for hands foolish enough to hold it. Picture it now, lying in velvet under the lights of a grand ballroom, men and women pressing closer, whispering in awe, the jewel staring back at them, cold, black, endless, and in the silence beneath the music, a single thought rising. Who will it claim next? The Black Orlov's arrival in New York was not just a story of a jewel entering a modern city. It was a story of how ancient curses follow across time, across oceans, into the very heart of modern ambition. The stone cared nothing for progress, nothing for glass towers or electric lights. Its curse was older, darker, deeper. And so New York, the city that prided itself on strength, became another stage for its tragedy, another place where lives ended and the jewel endured. The cursed eye had traveled far from its temple, but its vengeance had not weakened. If anything, it had grown sharper, stronger, more merciless. The Black Orlov had arrived, and wherever it glowed, despair followed. In every legend, there comes a name that stands out, a name that becomes a symbol of the curse itself. For the Black Orlov, that name belonged to a princess, a woman of wealth, beauty, and pride. She was Russian, a daughter of old nobility, and she believed she could own what others feared. She had grown up in a world of privilege, palaces, gowns, chandeliers, and the endless admiration of those around her. She was raised to think nothing was beyond her reach. But pride is a fragile crown, and the diamond was waiting for her. When the jewel came into her hands, New York society gasped. A cursed stone whispered of in dark corners, now hanging from the neck of a woman who dared to show it in public. She flaunted it at gatherings, under lights that shimmered against its dark surface. People stared, some in awe, some in horror, but she smiled. She believed the curse was only myth. At first, she wore with joy. She would lift her chin high, letting the diamond rest against her throat like a trophy. She laughed when guests whispered about its history. She dismissed the warnings of servants and friends. In her mind, she had tamed the jewel. She had proven herself above superstition. But the Black Orlov does not bow. Slowly, the princess began to change. It was not sudden. It was not loud. It was the quiet kind of change, the kind no one notices until it has already taken root. She grew restless. At night, her servants said they heard her walk in the halls, pacing long after midnight. Her laughter became brittle, sharp, as though joy had turned hollow. She began to speak less to friends, withdrawing into herself. Her beauty, once radiant, began to fade under the shadow of sleepless nights. Those close to her whispered that she was haunted. Some claimed she stared into the jewel for hours, as though it spoke to her. Others said she had visions, moments where she froze and her eyes widened, as if she saw something beyond the room. In public, she still wore the jewel. She still carried the mask of pride. But behind closed doors, the cracks widened. The curse had begun its slow work, not against her body, but against her mind. And then came the day of the fall. It was a morning like any other. The city outside bustled with life. Carriages rolling, voices rising. Inside her grand residence, the princess stood at the window of a high building. She was dressed with care. As always, the jewel still resting against her neck. The cursed eye, black as night, glowed faintly in the light of day. No one knows what went through her mind in those final moments. Did she hear whispers from the stone? Did she see something only she could see? Or was it despair, built day after day, pressing her toward the edge? She stepped forward. Her body fell, striking the ground below with a sound that silenced the street. Gasps rose from the crowd that gathered, their eyes fixed on the broken figure of a woman who had once been a princess. But amid the horror, one detail froze every witness. Around her neck, the diamond remained, untouched, unbroken. The Black Orlov had survived the fall. The image burned itself into memory, a woman of wealth. Life shattered in an instant, while the stone that marked her downfall gleamed cold, as if nothing had happened. That moment became the most infamous in the jewel's long journey. The newspapers carried the story. Whispers grew louder. They spoke of the princess who had mocked the curse, only to leap into death with the jewel still on her. The Black Orlov was no longer just a legend carried across oceans. It was now a modern terror, a curse that claimed a name known to all. What makes this moment so haunting is not just the death itself. It is the contrast, flesh and bone broken on the pavement, yet the diamond lying untouched, as though protected by unseen hands. It gave the curse a shape, a presence that no one could deny. From then on, the Black Orlov was not spoken of as only cursed. It was spoken of as a predator, a silent hunter that watched, waited, and struck when pride blinded its victim. The princess was its proof. She had everything, and still it stripped her bare. Those who studied the curse pointed to her as the clearest example of its power. She had not died from fire or storm or blade. She had been driven to it, step by step, until her mind broke and her body followed. The stone had not destroyed her from outside, but from within. And that is what makes the Black Orlov more frightening than any weapon. It does not kill quickly. It corrodes. It whispers. It feeds on pride and fear until the victim chooses their own end. The curse does not strike like lightning. It gnaws like time. The princess's fall marked a turning point. Collectors who once dreamed of owning the jewel began to step back. To touch it was no longer daring. It was reckless. Her death was not hidden, not whispered, but seen, recorded, remembered. And still, the diamond gleamed as though mocking the ruin it left. Some said the princess was punished not only for taking the jewel, but for flaunting it, by showing it to the world, by mocking the curse in public. She drew its gaze fully upon herself. If the stone truly is the eye of a god, then perhaps pride was the greatest insult, and pride was the price she paid with her life. Even today, when her story is told, it holds power. The image of her fall, the jewel intact, carries a weight that no words can soften. It is the picture of a curse made real, a legend stepped into the streets of a modern city. Imagine standing there, in that crowd, looking down at the broken body of a princess, and then seeing the jewel lying untouched. Would you not shiver? Would you not feel that something beyond human hands had chosen that moment? The Black Orlov's curse was no longer only a story of thieves and merchants. With the fall of the heiress, it became a curse that belonged to the modern age, a curse that proved itself in a city of reason and progress, where superstition was dismissed. Yet no one could dismiss what they saw with their own eyes. The heiress in the plunge became a symbol, a warning that no wealth, no beauty, no power could protect against the Black Diamond. It was proof that the curse was alive, proof that it traveled not just through centuries, but through the human mind itself. The stone remained. The princess was gone, and the world, once again, whispered of the cursed eye that survived while life ended. And so the jewel's story deepened. It had crossed temples, seas, fires, and storms. But nothing made it more infamous than the moment when pride leapt from the window and only the stone endured. The Black Orlov does not forget. It does not forgive. And in that fall, the curse showed its cruelest truth, that lives end, but the eye always remains. Every cursed object leaves behind a trail. The Black Orlov left a trail so wide, so tangled, that one could trace its path across continents. It began as a jewel stolen from a sacred idol, but what followed was no simple line of tragedy. It became a web, a net of doom that caught priests, traders, sailors, heiresses, and aristocrats alike. When one looks at the history of the diamond, it is not just a story of a single fall, or a single fire, or a single madness. It is a timeline stitched together by death. The first known names to vanish were the thieves who took it from the temple. Their faces never recorded, their bodies never found. Some said the river swallowed them. Others said they wandered into forest and never returned. Whether drowned or lost, their fate was the same. The diamond left them behind. Then came the priests who tried to trace its path. One traveled far, determined to recover the jewel for the temple. He never returned. His journey ended on a road outside Calcutta, where his body was found, his eyes open, his lips frozen in a silent scream. The diamond was gone. The curse moved on. A trader, proud of his bargain, carried it through the markets. He was struck down by fever within weeks. His wealth was scattered. The stone was sold again, hidden in cloth as though shame itself covered it. A merchant placed it in a chest aboard a ship. The sea rose with a storm, tearing the sails, drowning half the crew. The captain who kept it died before reaching shore, his body cast into the waves. The jewel survived untouched, gleaming even in salt and spray. Another owner, a nobleman in Europe, tried to silence the curse with denial. He claimed it was only coincidence. But soon his house burned. His family perished. He was found in the ashes while the jewel lay whole, its black surface reflecting firelight like a cruel smile. One by one, names began to attach themselves to its legend. A countess who wore it at her table, found dead in her chambers. A banker who locked in his vault, driven mad before his fortune collapsed. A Russian princess, proud and daring, who wore it into ballrooms and then leapt from a building. Her life shattered while the jewel remained whole. The deeper one investigates, the more names appear. It is as if history itself has threads tied to the stone. A thread in India, a thread in Russia, a thread in Europe, a thread in New York, all bound together by one black diamond. Detectives who studied its history saw not only tragedy, but pattern. The deaths were not random. They followed the stone. Each time it entered a new hand, misfortune followed. Not always the same, not always at once, but inevitable. And yet, human greed never faltered. For every man who fell, another rose to claim it. For every family broken, another believed they could tame it. Wealth has always blinded man, and so the curse fed on that blindness. But here lies the question that chills the heart. Was it the stone itself that brought ruin, or was it human desire that gave the curse its power? Some believe the Black Orlov is only a mirror, that it reflects what is darkest in those who hold it. Pride, envy, fear, greed. That the deaths were not the work of a supernatural force, but of human weakness sharpened by belief. The mind can be fragile, and fear can break it. Perhaps the curse was born not from the stone, but from the hearts of those who touched it. Yet if that were true, how does one explain the pattern? How does one explain bodies found lifeless without wound? Houses burned while the jewel remained whole? Ships wrecked, crews drowned, yet the stone glittering still? How does one explain the heiress who plunged to her death with the jewel intact, its black surface untouched by her ruin? Coincidence cannot weave so many threads so perfectly. It cannot stretch across centuries and lands, claiming life after life with the same quiet precision. So perhaps it is not greed alone. Perhaps the stone does more than reflect. Perhaps it chooses. Imagine it as a living eye, one that sees not with light, but with hunger. It watches those who touch it. It studies their weakness. It waits silent until the moment to strike. Some are broken swiftly. Others are worn down slowly, night after night, until despair drives them to their end. The method changes, but the result is the same. The diamond remains. The owner does not. This is the true horror of the Black Orlov. Not that it kills, but that it seems to know. The web of names it is caught is wide, too wide to dismiss. Priests, thieves, traitors, sailors, collectors, heiresses, bankers, princes, no class spared, no continent untouched. The curse shows no mercy, no pattern of wealth or rank. It is as though the jewel does not care who you are, only that you dare to hold it. What is more, the curse does not stop with death. Families tied to the stone often fell as well. Wealth crumbled, estates burned, names forgotten. It was not only individuals, but legacies that collapsed under its shadow. Fortune turned to dust, while the jewel remained eternal. And still, people reached for it. Why? Because the jewel was beautiful, terribly beautiful. Its black fire lured men and women alike, promising power, status, and fortune. And so they touched it, ignoring the screams of history. Each new name added another thread to its web. Each tragedy strengthened the legend. By the time it reached New York, the curse was no longer whispered in temples alone. It was spoken across continents. It had become a global shadow. The question still lingers, was it fate, written in the stone itself? Or was it the greed of men that fed the curse like fire feeds on dry wood? Perhaps it was both. The Black Orlov may have begun as a sacred jewel, an eye torn from a god. That act alone may have awakened a wrath that no prayer could calm. But it was human hands that carried it, human pride that flaunted it, human hunger that sold it again and again. The curse may not have lived without men to feed it, and men may not have fallen without the curse to tempt them. It is a dance between fate and desire, a dance where every step ends in ruin. The grim timeline of the Black Orlov is not just history, it is warning that some treasures are not meant to be taken, that some eyes are not meant to be stared into, and that sometimes what we call fortune is only the mass of death. The web stretches on, its threads unseen but felt. To trace it is to trace tragedy itself. To look at the Black Orlov's path is to see a pattern carved in sorrow. And still, the jewel waits. Oh, dark, eternal. While names fade, while houses fall, while lives end, it remains. The eye that should not have been touched, the stone that survives while fortune and flesh crumble, the cursed jewel whose history is written not in ink, but in death. This is the web of the Black Orlov, a web spun across centuries, a web stitched with human greed, divine wrath, and endless tragedy, a web that shows no sign of breaking. There are moments in every curse when the world forgets, when the shadow pulls back and silence takes its place. But silence is not peace, silence is waiting. After centuries of blood, fire, and despair, the Black Orlov seemed to vanish. No whispers in salons, no trades in markets, no reports of tragedy in newspapers. The cursed eye that had haunted so many lives was gone. Collectors who once feared it began to wonder. Had it been lost in the chaos of war? Was it locked away in a vault too deep to be opened? Or had it done what no one dared to imagine, consumed its last master? For years there was nothing, but nothing around the Black Orlov is ever simple. Some said the diamond had been hidden by those who finally understood its power, that a family, broken by loss, buried it under stone and soil, hoping it would never rise again. Others swore it had been stolen by a secret society, not to protect the world from the stone, but to protect the stone from the world. Hidden, not destroyed. Guarded, not forgotten. There were stranger whispers still, that the jewel had not been stolen or hidden at all, but had vanished of its own will, that it fed long enough on human misery, and now sank into silence, digesting its feast like a predator after the hunt. The idea was chilling. A jewel not lifeless, but alive in some way we cannot understand. An artifact that feeds, not on gold, not on blood, but on souls. Imagine it, a black diamond, holding centuries of death inside its surface. Each life it claimed adding to its weight. Each scream sealed into its shine. If such a thing were true, then the silence was not safety. It was hunger satisfied, for now the world moved on. Wars raged, empires fell, new nations rose. Men walked on the moon. But beneath the march of history, there was still the faint memory of the cursed jewel, a memory that lay in wait, quiet, like a scar beneath the skin. Psychologists who look back on its story later called the disappearance a necessary pause. They said no curse can live in constant fire. Even fear needs time to rebuild. The Black Orlov was more than jewel. It was a story carried through minds, and like every story, it needed silence before it could return stronger. But others, those who look at the world with darker eyes, believe differently. They see the disappearance not as silence, but as calculation, that the diamond was resting, waiting for a new age, waiting for new hands. Like a predator, it did not vanish. It crouched. One story told of a family in Europe who locked it away in an iron chest, burying it deep under their estate. For generations, they forbade anyone to speak of it. But when war swept across the land, the estate burned, the family scattered, and the chest was lost. Some believe it still lies buried beneath the soil, waiting. Another tale spoke of a collector who locked it in a vault and swore no one would ever see it again. But the collector's fortune collapsed, his name erased, and when his vault was opened years later, it was empty. No one knows if the stone was stolen or if it simply left. The mystery of its disappearance only added to its power. People feared it less when they could not see it. But fear does not die in silence. Fear grows in absence. The diamond became like a ghost. You could not find it, but you felt it. You could not see it, but you sense it might still be there. And in that uncertainty, its curse grew larger than ever. Some even wondered if forgetting was part of the curse itself, that the diamond wanted silence, that it wanted to vanish, so that when it returned, the world would tremble anew. The silence stretched for years, too many years for it to be chance, too perfect to be mere accident. And in that silence, questions rose like smoke. What happens when an object feeds not only on lives, but on memory? What if the curse itself is not only the deaths, but the forgetting? If history forgets, the stone is free to repeat its pattern, untouched by warning. Each disappearance would reset the fear. Each reappearance would strike harder. The thought is terrifying, that the Black Orlov is not only cursed, it is cunning. Science cannot explain such things. To scientists, it is only a stone carbon shaped by pressure. To historians, it is only a jewel tied to tragic accidents. But to those who look deeper, the disappearance is proof. Proof that it is not only stone, not only history, but something more. An artifact that does not live in human time. An artifact that feeds on souls, rests in silence, and then rises again when the hunger returns. Picture it. Lie in the dark during those silent years, wrapped in cloth, sealed in a chest, hidden in a vault. No eyes upon it, no hands touching it, and yet not asleep, watching, waiting. How many souls had it consumed already? How many screams did its black surface hold? And if such a thing could feed, what did it wait for in silence? A stronger victim? A bolder age? Or simply the next proud hand to lift it into the light again? The world forgot for a time, but the curse did not. Legends never end in silence. They pause, they rest, they gather strength, and when they return, they strike with even greater force. The Black Orlov's disappearance was not the end of its story. It was the breath before the scream. The cursed eye had vanished, but its shadow had not. The shadow lingered in whispers, in unease, in the strange truth that treasures sometimes survive where men do not. The diamond was waiting, as it always had. And one day, someone would dare to touch it again. For centuries, the Black Orlov had survived untouched. Fire could not scar it. Water could not wash it away. Death surrounded it, but never touched it. It seemed eternal, invincible, as though no hand could change its fate. But then came a man who dared to try. He was a jeweler, bold and ambitious. To him, jewels were not only treasures, but puzzles. He believed that every stone had a secret, and he was convinced that the secret of the Black Orlov could be broken. The world had whispered of its curse for too long. Too many lives had ended. Too many names had been lost. People said the jewel was alive. People said it carried souls within it. The jeweler listened, but he did not tremble. He believed in the strength of his own hands, in the precision of his craft. His idea was simple, yet dangerous. If the Black Orlov was cursed, then perhaps the curse belonged only to the whole stone. Break the stone, and the curse would be broken, divided into smaller jewels, and the darkness would shatter. It was not greed that drove him, but pride. He wanted to be remembered as the man who tamed the most dangerous jewel in history. To others, the Black Orlov was death. To him, it was challenge. And so, he placed the diamond on his bench. The room was silent. The world outside went on as usual. Carriages rolling, voices rising, lights glowing. But inside, there was only him, his tools, and the black jewel that had claimed centuries. He stared at it. Its surface was still dark as night. No glow, no movement. Yet he felt as though it was staring back. For a moment, he hesitated. But then he reminded himself it was only carbon pressed by the earth. A stone, nothing more. He would break it, and with that cut, he would cut away its legend. He prepared his blade. The steel gleamed. His hands, though steady, carried a strange tremor. He placed the blade against the jewel, and then he struck. Sparks flew. The sound rang through the room, a sharp, cutting note that echoed against the walls. Some later swore that it was not just sound, but something else, a cry, a scream that did not belong to human lips. but came from deep inside the stone. The jeweler did not stop. He struck again, sparks flashing like fireflies in the dark. He pressed the blade, pushing harder until the surface gave way. The Black Orlov cracked. The jewel that had survived centuries of death, storms, and fire was cut apart. The jeweler leaned back, sweat on his brow, his heart racing. He stared at the fragments that lay before him. They glittered faintly, each piece smaller, but none less dark. He smiled. He believed he had done it. The curse was shattered. The Eye of Brahma was no longer whole. The fragments were polished, shaped, set into smaller jewels. Rings, pendants, stones to be sold. The jeweler was praised for his daring. Collectors marveled. For the first time, people thought the curse was gone. But curses do not end with steel. One by one, the fragments began to tell their story. The first buyer wore a piece on his hand. Within weeks, he was dead. His carriage overturned on a calm road. No cause found. The stone was recovered whole, shining, as though mocking his broken body. Another fragment, set in a necklace, passed to a wealthy woman. She wore it proudly, but soon grew sick. Her mind faltered. Her health failed. She withered in her bed, clutching the jewel until the last breath left her lips. Each fragment carried its own shadow. Smaller, yes, but no less dark, as if the curse had not been destroyed, only multiplied. The jeweler himself did not escape. He too grew restless, haunted by dreams. He swore he could hear whispers in the night, whispers from the stones he had cut. His fortune declined, his mind weakened, until he too faded, leaving behind nothing but tools, dust, and fragments of the jewel that had promised him greatness. It became clear the curse was not tied to the whole stone. It was tied to its essence. Each piece was still the same black diamond. Each piece still carried the weight of the temple theft, the wrath of the gods, the despair of centuries. The curse had not been broken. It had been scattered. This twist only deepened the legend. Imagine it. A curse no longer bound to one jewel, but to many. A shadow no longer resting in one eye, but in countless shards, each waiting for new hands, new victims, new stories. Some even believe the jeweler had made the curse worse, that the Black Orlov, once a single predator, was now a pack, that the hunger of the stone had been multiplied, not diminished. The thought is chilling. A single cursed jewel is tragedy enough, but many cursed fragments, scattered into rings and necklaces, means a curse could be anywhere, worn in silence by a man in London, resting on the neck of a woman in Paris, locked in a vault in New York. Each piece carrying its own shadow, its own hunger, its own fate. It is said that one cannot cut away memory. One cannot divide a soul. And perhaps the Black Orlov was never just stone. Perhaps it was always something more. Something alive, something eternal, something that steel cannot wound. The recut did not silence it. The recut only proved that it cannot be destroyed. Think of the courage of the jeweler, or perhaps the madness, to place a blade against what so many fear to even touch. To believe that human skill could cut away divine wrath. His hands may have been steady, but his mind underestimated what lay within. And think of the silence that followed the strike. The way sparks flew. The way some swore they heard a scream. If stone could cry, what would it sound like? If a curse could resist, how would it fight? Perhaps what they heard was not sound at all, but the echo of something breaking free. The Black Orlov, once whole, now lived in fragments. But each fragment carried the same darkness. The curse did not scatter. The curse spread. Collectors began to fear it more than ever. To own one piece was dangerous enough, but to know that there were many hidden across the world was unbearable. How many hands would touch them? How many names would be added to the web of death? How many families would fall, never knowing the jewel on their finger was a very curse spoken of in legend? The recut should have been victory, but it became defeat, because the Black Orlov was never just stone. It was story. It was curse. It was memory. And memory cannot be cut. Curse cannot be split. They only grow like cracks spreading in glass. Even today, the fragments exist. Some locked away. Some displayed in museums. Some worn by those who do not know what they carry. each one a piece of shadow, each one a reminder that the curse lives on. The jeweler's blade may have cut the diamond, but it did not cut the darkness within. And so, the legend persists, stronger, wider, more haunting than before. The Black Orlov was not destroyed. It was multiplied. And with each fragment, the curse continues patient, silent, eternal. Time has a way of softening stories. Wars fade into books. Empires turn into ruins. Legends slip into whispers. But there are some things that time cannot silence. Some objects carry their curse into the modern age, and the Black Orlov is one of them. It still exists, not as a myth, not as a forgotten tale, but as a jewel you can see with your own eyes, locked in private collections, hidden behind glass in museums. It waits, a stone that has traveled through centuries of ruin, still glowing with that same dark fire. Collectors claim it is only a jewel, a stone cut by earth, valued for its size and rarity. But anyone who has stood before it knows better. Visitors who have seen it displayed speak of strange feelings, unease, a dizziness that creeps up without warning, a weight pressing on the chest, as if the jewel itself were breathing. Some say they felt their thoughts slow, their heart race, their skin prickle, as though unseen eyes followed them. The jewel does not move. It sits quietly, shining under the museum lights. But those who stand before it swear they are being watched. Imagine yourself there, standing in a crowded room, surrounded by people, yet feeling utterly alone. The glass separating you from the diamond is thick, secure, and yet it does not feel like you're looking at it. It feels like it is looking at you. Black, endless, silent. The eye that once stared from the forehead of a god now stares through glass, through time, through you. Some people laugh it off. They shake their heads, smile at the thought of curses, and walk away. But even they admit that something about the jewel lingers. The memory of its stare stays long after they leave the room. Others do not laugh. They leave quickly, unsettled, unwilling to stay another second under its gaze. For them, the Black Orlov is not beauty. It is threat. Psychologists explain it as suggestion. If you know the story of the curse, your mind expects unease, and so you feel it. But that does not explain those who had no knowledge of its past, yet reported the same chills, the same dizziness, the same sense of being watched. Could it be that the stone carries more than memory? Could it be that the weight of every life it claimed is still inside it, pressing outward, reaching into the minds of those who come near? The idea unsettles even the most rational. Today, the Black Orlov is a prize exhibit, guarded, admired, and feared. When it appears in a museum, it draws crowds. People line up to see it. They whisper of its curse as they approach. Some dare to stare into its surface, challenging the legend. Others glance only once and quickly turn away, afraid of what they might see. For the curse is not only death. It is thought. It is the whisper in the back of the mind that says, "You should not be here." And perhaps that is why it endures. Because the curse is not always a blow of fate. Sometimes it is a seed planted in the imagination, growing with every heartbeat. Yet, the tragedies have not stopped. Even in modern times, the jewel leaves a shadow. A collector who purchased it found his fortune crumble within years. Another who displayed it in private circles faced scandal and ruin. The jewel moved again quiet, always leaving broken lives behind. It is not displayed often. Museums choose their moments carefully, as if even they fear to keep it for long. Each time it emerges, its legend grows. The stories are retold. The tragedies are remembered. The curse renews itself. There is something chilling about seeing such a jewel under modern lights. We are used to associating curses with ancient ruins, old temples, forgotten lands. But here it is in the present, surrounded by glass, guarded by security cameras, yet still carrying the same dread it did centuries ago. Modern technology has not weakened it. Electricity cannot dim it. Science cannot explain it. The Black Orlov has crossed into our age unchanged. Some visitors describe standing before it as an almost hypnotic experience. They cannot look away. The darkness pulls them in. They see shapes within its depths, reflections that do not belong, movements that do not exist. One woman swore she saw her own face inside the stone, but not as it was, as it would be older, broken, lifeless. Was it her imagination, or was it the curse showing her a glimpse of what lay ahead? There are tales of children staring into the jewel, then crying without reason. Tales of men turning pale, sweating, and stumbling away as though their strength was drained. Tales of women swearing they heard a faint hum, like a heartbeat pulsing inside the stone. And always the same detail. The jewel remains silent, unmoved, but never powerless. It is this presence that makes it so mysterious. A diamond should not feel alive. A stone should not make you dizzy, should not watch you, should not whisper into your thoughts. Yet the Black Orlov does all of this, quietly, invisibly, without lifting itself from the case. Perhaps it is not the curse that survives, but the will of the stone itself. Think of it. An artifact that does not age, does not break, does not weaken, but waits. An object that has already crossed centuries, oceans, and lives. An eye that never closes. How many more will stand before it? How many more will stare into its black depths and feel the same unease, the same chill? How many more lives will it touch, even without being owned, even without being worn? The Black Orlov today is both treasure and terror. A relic of history, a jewel of fortune, and yet also a shadow that reminds us how fragile the human mind can be. It is proof that not all curses belong to past. Some live among us still. Picture a modern museum hall. Clean floors, white walls, quiet voices. In the center, a glass case. Lights shine down, illuminating the jewel. People walk past, some glancing quickly, others stopping to stare. Children hold their parent hands. Couples whisper. Alone the jewel sits, and yet it feels as though it is the one watching the crowd. It is a strange reversal. In every museum, visitors look at objects, but with the Black Orlov, the object seems to look at them. That is a true horror of the modern shadow. Not that the jewel has killed, but that it still can. Not that it has survived, but that it still waits. The curse may no longer strike with fire or storm, but with thought. With fear, with the feeling that you are never alone when you stand before it. Even behind glass, even guarded by alarms, even surrounded by crowds, the Black Orlov remains what always was: a watchful eye, silent, patient, eternal. And those who leave the museum, who walk back into the city streets, often carry with them not joy, not awe, but unease. They remember the stare. They remember the feeling. They remember that some treasures should never have been touched. The world may call it artifact, science may call it diamond, but those who looked into its depths know another name. They call it curse, and the curse, even today, is alive. There are stones that shine for beauty. There are jewels that glitter for fortune. And then there are those that stare back. The Black Orlov, the Eye of Brahma, is one such jewel. It has seen centuries. It has crossed oceans. It has lived through empires that rose in triumph and fell in ashes. It has outlived thieves and priests, traders and sailors, princesses and collectors. It has survived fires, storms, wars, and falls from heights where bones shattered, but it remained whole. Always silent, always watching. The story of the Black Orlov is not a straight line. It is a circle, a pattern that repeats itself again and again. A hand reaches for it. A life is broken. The stone survives. This has been its truth since the night it was torn from the forehead of a sacred idol, since the moment the god was blinded and a curse was set loose. Men thought they owned it, but each time it proved the opposite. It does not matter who touches it. It does not matter where it is kept. The jewel endures while lives collapse around it. Perhaps this is the cruelest lesson of all, that men do not possess it. It possesses men. Think of how many eyes have looked into its surface. Priests chanting in the temple. Thieves trembling in the dark. Merchants hiding it in cloth. Sailors carrying it across seas. Heiresses flaunting it before the world. Collectors locking it in vaults. Visitors staring at it behind museum glass. All of them gazed into its depths, and all of them saw something more than stone. And yet, the jewel itself never changed. It has no language, no voice. And yet it speaks through fear, through tragedy, through silence. Its message is clear. It does not belong to us. Some believe it is cursed because it was stolen from a god. Others say it is cursed because it carries the weight of every soul it has claimed. There are even those who whisper that it is alive in ways we cannot explain, a fragment of eternal hidden in crystal form. If that is true, then the curse is not chance. The curse is will. An eye sees, an eye remembers, an eye waits. The Black Orlov has done all three. It has seen the blood of thieves, the despair of aristocrats, the madness of collectors. It has remembered every scream, every fall, every ruin, and it has waited, patient, silent, unbroken, for the next hand bold enough to hold it. Perhaps this is why even now, when it is shown in museums, people feel what they cannot explain, the dizziness, the unease, the prickling sense of being watched, because it is not we who look at the diamond. It is the diamond that looks at us. And here lies the final thought. If an eye is eternal, then perhaps the curse is eternal too. It does not matter where it rests. In temples, in vaults, in chests, in glass cases, the shadow follows. The memory remains. The Eye of Brahma waits. Always. Perhaps the greatest fear is not that it will claim another life, but that it always will. That no age, no science, no modern wall of glass can silence what began centuries ago in a silent temple. Maybe it does not matter who owns the stone. Maybe the stone owns us. And now, as you sit and listen to its story, you cannot help but wonder, what if you stood before it? What would you feel? Would you look away? Or would you let it stare into you, as it has stared into so many before? That is the endless stare. The stare that has crossed time. The stare that will outlast us all. If you found yourself drawn into this journey, if the story of the Black Orlov unsettled you, intrigued you, made you wonder what else in this world waits in silence, then stay with us. Share this story with those who hunger for mystery. Subscribe to join the path where legends and curses still breathe. And remember to like this tale if the stare of the diamond still lingers in your thoughts. Because there are more stories. More cursed lands, lost cities, and forbidden relics that carry shadows just as deep. And together, we will walk into them one by one. But for now, the Black Orlov remains where it has always been waiting. Silent, eternal, watching.